10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
Alrighty, everyone. Welcome back to this week's episode of Women in Sports. I am super, super excited for our guest this week. She's incredible. I got to work with her at SIU, Coach Kerri Blaylock. She is one of the winningest coaches in Saluki softball history and one of the winningest in Division I for softball as well. She's incredible. She's awesome. She's so good at what she does. I'm super excited to have you on our show this week. Thank you so much, Coach Blaylock.
I appreciate you having me, Erin. It's good to see you again.
Yeah, absolutely. Awesome. Well, we're just going to get right into it. Clearly you're just great. You have just all the winning seasons. I absolutely loved watching you work, getting to be around you when I was at SIU as a GA. It was awesome. But yeah, just kind of take us back to softball in your life to begin with, and kind of how you have been able to become kind of who you are today.
Well, I grew up very close to Carbondale. So I grew up in a little town called Herrin, Illinois. And when you were a female athlete in Herrin, you were going to be a softball player. We were very, very successful. I thought I was going to be a catcher, and I thought I was going to be a third baseman. That's what I wanted to be. And my dad was a great mentor and guided me. And he said, Kerri, you really can't hit, you can't run. Let's think about being a pitcher. That may get you to college. He was very honest too. So I became a pitcher, and Herrin produced a lot of pitchers and ended up going to college. And when I went to college, I thought I was going to be an accountant, and, got my MBA while I was a GA. And, I just one of those things where the head coach at SIU came up to me when I was coaching at Southeast Missouri State as a GA and said, "Hey, have you thought about coaching?" And, back in the late 80s, early 90s, I was thinking about, again, being an accountant, got my MBA, and lo and behold, 32 years later, here I am, same place. And I became a softball coach, and it is the best decision I ever made in my life, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like you dated yourself a little bit, but I never actually, like, when I think about, like, when we celebrated like your 20th season and all that stuff, I was like, there's no way. But then you taught me how to pitch. Well, I don't even know how old I was. We have pictures that go
you were very little. Absolutely. You were
so tiny. And I feel like I remember all those conversations, like with my dad was like, we got to really think about like what you want to do and what you're going to be good at. And I chose basketball, but
yeah, I always said that my dad, my biggest fan, biggest cheerleader, and he was my best friend. I mean, there's no doubt. I lost him at a young age. But he taught me, him and my brother, if it wasn't for them, they would take me out, we'd play catch. They included me in everything. So just because I was female, they always included me. That didn't matter. And so he was a driving force for me to figure out, yeah, you're really good at this, and why don't we try to excel? And like I said, I ended up loving pitching. It, helped pay for my college. And then, it's helped turn me into, I think, the person that I am, because being a pitcher, you're kind of out there on an island by yourself a lot. You have to learn toughness, perseverance. There's a lot of things you need to do while you're on the mound. So it's been a really good journey for me.
Yeah, definitely. And then kind of just walking us through, you obviously played a high school sport, which was super awesome. And then were able to, like, during your time, then kind of go through the recruiting process and stuff like that. What was that really like for someone, kind of from a small town, things like that? What did that really look like?
Well, in the mid 80s, softball was prevalent, and obviously SIU had softball the 50s and the 60s. So I was recruited by Southern Illinois. I was recruited by Ball State. The University of Indiana dabbled a little bit, and then the University of Evansville. And at that time, full rides were were not the norm at all. You know, if you got a 50%, that was a pretty good deal. And so when SIU recruited me, with the scholarship dollars, my mom and dad said, well, you can just live at home if you go to SIU. Well, at that time, you know, as a high school senior, you're like, nah, I think I'd like to get out on my own. So that's honestly why I didn't end up here. It's because I wanted to venture out, and I ended up at the University of Evansville and played there for 4 years. You know, at that time, again, there were colleges. Of course, we played the University of Missouri. We played, you know, we went to the University of South Carolina and played. So there were universities at that time that were playing high level softball, which was awesome. But, you know, traveling in vans, you know, eating at McDonald's all the time because you didn't have money, you know, your uniforms were just not the best, and things have just changed so much for the better. It's so awesome to see how young ladies now, young women now, are able to play at such a high level and be able to be outfitted really well, and their equipment's very nice, and they get to travel very well. That's very important because they are high level athletes. So it's really, you know, it's been very nice to see that transformation.
Yeah, even too, SIU being just like, I feel like always the leading the way for women in sports, leading the way for diversity and inclusion.
Yes.
Just the history that I know, just because my parents are alums, you know, my grandparents live down the street. I obviously got to be a GA there, and just being in that environment and meeting Charlotte West and being in Charlotte West Stadium. I literally wrote, I think it was like my high school thesis was on Charlotte West, and then getting to go and watch her get inducted into the Basketball Hall of Fame, like just the history at SIU, and then being able to represent the sports there was absolutely incredible. And then just the high class softball program. And I had never really been fully exposed because I obviously went to Evansville for 2 years and then transferred, and we didn't have softball. Basketball was the big thing because I went to another smaller school, and I just remember being like, wow, like I obviously watched a bunch of games because I had to go to all your guys' games that obviously took place in the fall and the spring. And I was just like, this is so incredible. It's just a different experience for sure. And then just knowing the history of the university and you as a coach and your coaching staff that you brought in was just so much fun for sure. And you kind of hit on, like, you guys were taking vans, you were eating McDonald's and things like that. Do you think that's kind of really impacted the way that you've been able to kind of like stand up for your program and bring in money and really like go at bat for your players?
Yeah, no doubt. You know, when you brought up, you know, which I'd be remiss if I didn't say this, you know, Dr. West and Coach Brechtelsbauer, who was here for 32 years, such big mentors for me. And I was as a young coach to work for these women that were leaders in sports, which has been fantastic. So when I got here, you know, we, you know, just like everywhere else, you know, you start kind of trying to go to bat for your kids and go to bat for your program. Fundraising was very important. We have great capability in the softball realm in this community. People want to give. So, and I find it very, very important. I say this all the time. We are quote unquote a mid-major, you know, that is not an offensive term to me, because, you know, when we were beating teams in the early 2000s, like LSU and Florida State and Stanford and Alabama, you know, people then took notice of who we were. I felt it was very important that our kids look like a Power Five, they train like a Power Five, they act like a Power Five, even though they're not, because I want them to feel that when they step on the field, that they're equal, you know, with who they're playing. And so we do train like that. We try to give the kids what we can, because we're recruiting against the Power Five, and we're bringing these young women in here, and we want to again make them feel like they belong at that level, and then then we play like it, you know. So it was important for me, you know, when you come from a background where you don't get to travel like that, it's kind of not nice to be able to, you know, get on a charter bus where everybody has their own seat, and you're not fighting for things of that nature.
Yeah, and you said it, like, not only do you guys look the part for sure, and the field is beautiful, absolutely incredible, the stadium, the setup, and then you really do go out there and put on a show. Like, I was like, SIU softball, like, how have I missed this my whole life? Obviously, I had always heard about the successes and the tournament runs, and always finishing like top 3 in the Missouri Valley, which is a great softball conference. But yeah, you guys for sure, you operate top down like a very, very high level program. So definitely kudos to you on that for sure.
Well, and I tell you, Erin, I believe, and you have to give credit. I've been so fortunate to have such great young women that have played for me, and then great assistant coaches. I mean, that's what it's about. The recruiting part is key. If you can recruit and you can get kids in, then that's the important part, because I don't go out and play the game, they do, so that has been huge from having assistants and having these young women that have come here.
Yeah. And even too, your recruiting is so, I think, potentially just because you were a player and you've been, not only a successful coach, but you've only kind of been at SIU, which is also something it's a very uncommon. If you look at, somebody being a coach for that long, you're like, wow, like they probably jumped around and did this. Like, I've talked to people that have been at 10 different schools in like their 20 year career. But I think it's so, like there's not a lot of coaches that have been able to, be successful, especially too with just the culture of Division I and those quick fires. And, if you're not winning, then stuff like that. But the way that you've been able to bring in people and then go out and compete, it's been really awesome to definitely be a part of it. But even too, when you kind of talked about you pitched, and then you also like didn't just pitch. You have a lot of history, broke a lot of records at Evansville in high school in the state of Illinois. So you definitely were a baller for sure, Coach.
Back in the day, maybe.
Yeah, I'm sure you could go out there and compete. So I bet. But yeah, kind of like walk us through, like, when was that kind of moment? Was there a moment when you were playing that you were like, oh, I can coach? I know you talked about like going into accounting, things like that. But yeah, when did that switch kind of flip?
We were playing at a tournament with the University of Missouri and Southeast Missouri State, and Southeast Missouri State's coach came over to me and just said, hey, I have a graduate assistantship available, and you can come get your master's, and would you be my pitching coach? Well, at that time, I had no clue you could do that. That was not even on my radar screen. And I can remember the conversation with my mom and dad, because I had already had a job lined up as an accountant. And that conversation of, oh, I'm going to not make any money, but I'm going to go coach and get a degree. Could you all help me out just for a couple more years? And so the conversation was absolutely, that was my parents. My parents are about, let us make a path for you to do what you think you can be successful at. So I went over to Southeast Missouri State, and I was a GA for 2 years. And the same thing happened with Coach Brechtelsbauer. It's like, hey, I don't really have any money for you right now. Here at SIU, I could probably scrape up about $5,000. And that's what I can scrape up your first year. Same thing. Went back to my parents. Hey, I think I can make $5,000 my first year. What do you think? After, this accounting job that I was lined up for, and again, they were like, absolutely, kind of go for your dreams. Let's see what we got. And it's really interesting, Erin, because I grew up literally, I'm a coal miner's daughter, the whole, Johnny Cash, whatever song,
yeah.
or Loretta Lynn song, but I really am. And so it's like, the hardworking kind of thing, but also my mom and dad provided to the opportunities for my brother and myself. So that's kind of how it ended up here. And like I said, 32 years later, obviously have had other job offers throughout my career, but this place has always been home and been special to me. And we just absolutely, I love what our players have done and what their careers they've gone on to and what we've been able to do at SIU. To me, I love the underdog story. I love it. I was an underdog as a player. I was 5'7". I weighed a lot more than I do now. I was the underdog. Can she play at that level? And so I love, going out and beating the teams and competing against the teams that we do here.
Yeah, absolutely. And even too, like the being under Coach K, obviously she has too, like a very rich history, being a longtime head coach, and you being her assistant as well for that long. What was kind of that next step into actually like not being just a GA, but then walking into the beginning of your coaching career with Coach K?
Well, Coach Brechtelsbauer is wonderful. She was a head coach here for 32 years. Like I said, she allowed me to come in, and I learned under her and a gentleman by the name of Gary Buckles was the pitching coach. And so first couple of years, I just learned, and I was around. We went to the NCAA tournament as an at-large. I'm sorry, we won the conference championship my first year here. So in 91, we won a conference tournament, and, we were able to go to an NCAA. So that kind of got my appetite of, wow, this is pretty cool. And so she, kept me on when Gary retired, named me pitching coach and her assistant. And I handled a lot of the recruiting there, through the mid 90s. And, she was awesome. She let me kind of do my job, which was be her pitching coach and be her assistant. And along the way, what was so great about Coach B is that she then said, okay, I'm going to let you take over coaching third base. Okay, I'm going to let you take over giving signals. I'm going to let you take over. And so she kind of groomed me, and she was phenomenal. She just gave me pieces of the puzzle when she felt like I was ready to have them. And so neither one of us were in a big hurry, but she taught me and was allowed me to kind of grow, which is amazing. She allowed me to become the coach I am by allowing me to dabble in things along the way. And so I was her assistant for, I think, 9 years, 9 or 10 years. I was an assistant. And then it was time when I was starting to look at head jobs, and she was ready to retire. And then she entrusted me with something that was kind of her baby she had made, for, like I said. So she was wonderful.
Yeah. And it wasn't even like stepping into a head coaching position at a school that you kind of needed to rebuild and make your own. It was already, like you said, your first year, you guys went to the NCAAs, and it was already, really a thriving program, a place where people, you competed against very high level teams, or what you'd say you're like big time FBS schools, things like that. What kind of was that first, like, stepping into as a head coach? Like, did you think it was going to kind of be as easy? Were there things that you had been, kind of wanting to make your own and that you've always wanted, or was it just kind of a smooth transition?
Oh, I was a nervous wreck. I can remember vividly coaching my first game. I can vividly remember that. But, you do want to put your kind of own your own footprint on it, but using a lot of the things that I learned from her and the administrative skills I learned from Dr. West, and then transferring that into being a head coach. My first job as a head coach was getting a quality assistant. I mean, that was, the first thing that I wanted to do. So I went out and got my good friend, Buddy Foster, who came, and we coached together at SEMO as a GA and a student assistant. So that was my first thing, is building that program and then keeping it going. But, you mentioned something earlier, which I think all young coaches need to understand, is there are times in your career where there's bumps. And, we've had bumps here where we've had a couple of years where we didn't play as well, but we've been able to reinvent ourselves and then, get recruits that then elevate you back up. And, I've had great assistants that have come and gone. And that's another thing that just helps you through the day to day. So my thing is, hiring good assistants, and then obviously getting those great kids, because the kids are the things that drive the train.
Yeah. And the way that you've just been able to keep such a organized, tight ship and keep that quality control is really something that I definitely learned from you, and you guys really do think about everything. So definitely. Yeah. And you kind of talked about like you wanting to make your own mark and leave your own footprint, what were kind of, or what have been really kind of some of those non-negotiables of like what you want your teams to be about every year and the way you guys want to carry yourselves season in and season out?
Well, I think a lot of people can talk about culture, and that's the buzzword, but you have to live it. You have to do it every day. So the non-negotiables for us are things such as, we're always on time. We're never late. And when I say we're never late, I mean, I've left players that I got on the bus and we drove away, and that it's a non-negotiable. Going to class, non-negotiable. You will go to class. Making sure our captains, I'll give you an example. Our captains are the last one to leave practice because they're the ones that pick up the dugout. They pick up the trash. They make sure that the kids are getting in the locker room, doing what they're supposed to do. Our entire team puts out equipment, takes up equipment. That's not left for the freshmen. I know a lot of people the freshmen do this. Everybody, we want servant leaders. We want pleases and thank yous. We tell our kid, please and thank you, and you're welcome, and things like that. Great communication. Those are kind of the non-negotiables. And I don't have a long laundry list of team rules. We talk about doing the right thing, and if you don't do the right thing, then I just feel like that you're not invested in what this is about. And what we try to do is then pass all of this along. And I feel like our upperclassmen are just really good ambassadors, and they just pass that along of what we're going to look like and what this needs to look like. COVID has been, another challenge because you don't get to be around each other as much as you want to, and especially the kids. So it's just another challenge, but I really do believe our upperclassmen do a great job.
Yeah, that's a good word. I feel like all the coaches watching, please, and listening, take note of that. Cause yeah, that's especially too, like for a sport that is heavy equipment and things like that's super important. I remember definitely just like, I hated giving freshmen more than what like they're transitioning and, they just like need to feel taken care of in a certain way and stuff like that. So that's really awesome, Coach. I love that.
And I will tell you, Erin, I hear a lot of people say, well, certain sports, whether it be basketball or another sport, well, it's just different, and there may be different, cultures or different ways. I just don't believe in that. I believe you start by, the expectation of how this needs to go. And I will tell you another thing about my teams that probably the thing I'm most proud of is the unselfishness. So we're and that doesn't mean that they're not competitors and they don't have, egos and they don't want to get after it, but they're unselfish individuals, and they're going to, that's something I try to teach right when they get here, is that to be a team, I utilize my entire roster. I do all the time, and I let kids get in there and compete. And I think it's very important.
Yeah. Even too, like I was able to see that, honestly. And it's one of those things too, like you, obviously, like me playing a collegiate sport and being around so many different teams and people and things like that, and coaches as well. Like you see a level of like Saluki softball has fun. Like they go out there, and from the top person, like you had an incredible freshman pitcher last season. She killed it. And I was sitting there like, I would be so nervous, but the way your girls were just able to take them in, and like, it was a sisterhood for sure. And I can always see and tell, like when I look at teams, when they're like genuinely having fun, from, the top person to the last person, the managers, support staff, like we always had so much fun. And just watching you guys go out and compete, you could definitely see the investment in the culture that you've really been able to create there for sure. Yeah. So kind of too, talking about like you bringing in these recruits, Carbondale, Illinois, it's smaller. I obviously love it. I'm very biased because my dad grew up there. Like I've been going there my whole life. I've been a dog forever. But yeah, what kind of really is your process? You kind of spoke to it earlier of like recruiting is super important, like getting those players stuff like that. How do you really go about that?
Well, I think that if you go back and read any of the things that our kids might say on their, their profiles in the media guide, they talk about how we create a family here. And I think they feel like it's a family atmosphere. And I want to let everybody into that family that works with us, from, the person in marketing to our SID, to our trainer, to our equipment manager, all the way down, to the kids. And I think it's really, really important. So I think they feel that investment. I feel like I'm able to, because I'm not at, I'm not drawn in so many different directions, that I'm able to invest a lot of time. And the kids understand. I think that my role has changed over the years. When I started, I was, as a head coach, I was in my early 30s, right? And, now I'm 54. So now I'm kind of the mom. I don't want to say I'm shifting to the grandma, but I'm kind of that person. I'm kind of that person that they can rely on, and I have hired 2 assistants right now that are now kind of taking my place for what I used to do. So it's evolving, but it's a good thing. But anyway, to get them to come to Carbondale, to me, it's the beauty of the place. It's gorgeous, and that's going to sell itself, and the campus is beautiful. But then to get them to meet our kids. And I think the kids do a great job. Our young women do a great job of selling this place, but it is a lot about family.
Yeah. And I think too, that once again trickles down, just the impact that, the girls really do take care of each other, and they want to show off like how incredible of a program, and really too, like, you guys do not shy away from the fact, like, you are underdogs, but you compete with, you play Mississippi State this year, like, you have big and continue to be successful against big teams and things like that. So yeah, definitely. And earlier you kind of hit on, Dr. West really groomed you administration wise and things like that. And now you are starting to kind of transition a little bit. You did step into the SWA position. I was able to kind of be a part of that, and that was super cool. And yeah, if you just kind of want to like, just walk us through that. Is that, how was that? And just kind of what did you find, kind of wearing that administrative hat for the first time?
I think that I always kind of wanted to be an administrator, probably later in my career. Coming in during COVID was hard, because what you're having to do. One of my jobs right now that I took from the SWA is I'm the kind of the COVID coordinator in athletics. I do all the testing. I schedule all the testing. At the beginning, I worked with our athletic director, Liz Jarnigan, and some other members of a committee on the plans of how to return to work and how the student athletes return, which we did. I think it turned out really well. What kind of, Aaron, the reason I decided to kind of step away from it is, if it was just COVID or it was just the budget impacts, I could probably deal with it. But everything at once, honestly, kind of drug me down. And, at the end of the day, to me, these kids are most important to me. These young women are most important to me. And I apologize because sometimes I say kids, but, I'm 54 and a lot of them are younger. But these young women, they're so important to me. I wanted to go to practice and I wanted to give them my undivided attention without just being drugged down by, what was going on, and, just whether it be budgetarily or whether it be, COVID or whatever. So I decided to step away so I could focus on a team that I think is going to be really, really good this year. And I felt like they deserved my attention, and I felt like my assistants deserved my attention. So, hopefully one day I'll get back into administration. I think I like it. I think it's like something I would like to dabble in for sure. But right now, being a softball coach was super important.
Definitely too, in a time that I feel like young people in general just really need guidance and support, and there's so many unforeseens and things like that. But even too, just to kind of like talk about the responsibilities of an SWA, a position that is super important for sure. What kind of things did you like when you were the SWA? Like what were your main responsibilities and things like that?
So stepping into it, I stepped into it at the end of January, and kind of my first the biggest responsibility to me of an SWA is Title IX. So my athletic director, Liz Jarnigan, was an SWA at several different Division I institutions before she became athletic director. So we were in the process of her just walking me through a lot of reporting, calculations, rules, regulations, kind of going through the Title IX handbook, Title IX Bible of trying to, so we were doing all of that, and I was learning a ton because it's a huge, important, position. I had responsibilities over athletic training and strength and conditioning. A lot of SWAs will have direct sport reports, but we felt since I was a coach, maybe it wasn't a good idea to have other coaches reporting to me as a coach. But SWAs across the country obviously have sport reports, and which is a huge, and I would love to do at some point, being a mentor or help young coaches just think about things as they go through things, being involved in administrative meetings. With everything from the budget to facilities to events, the whole gamut. So there were a lot of different things going on. And then, we got thrown into obviously COVID and issues that COVID, leads us to.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think too, even just the ability for you to like step into that and then be like, hey, like, I don't, not right now, and putting that on pause, but then still being able to like, hey, like, I want to still lead the charge for COVID. I want to still, be that point person. We were kind of talking earlier, you've been back in the office since June 1st, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah. And so then what kind of like, when things, obviously your season was cut extremely short. I literally went home for 3 days for spring break and then never came back, and had our full promo schedule. Everything was just, it was so tragic. I couldn't even imagine like as those girls, and I was so excited for your guys' season. And I like finally understood. I like was like, I can go play. Like I know this game so well now. But what kind of was that transition like? How are you able to really like not only walk your girls through that, but then walk the entire athletic department and just try to learn as much as you could about the unprecedented times?
Yeah, it was obviously it was the saddest day of my coaching career. March 11th, March 12th, when I had to tell the kids like we're done, which it's still so surreal. We lost our first 5 games, and then we won 15 of 16, and we were on such a roll, and felt really good about where we were going. So I think the uncertainty, I feel like when you're a leader, that those young women needed to see me be able to lead them, direct them, kind of tell them it's going to be okay. I was trying to be a good communicator, trying to let them know. I think they were panicked at first. It was like, oh no, we can't come back for the school year. Then it was like, are we ever going to get to come back? So it's realizing and walking them through that, we're going to go step by step, but yes, things may look a little different, but we're going to get back, and here's how it's going to go. And so felt like it was really important to take them through that. In the meantime, having to figure out, okay, how do we get the staff back to work, and how do we get the kids back? So it became talking with our team physician, our chief of police here on campus, who runs our emergency operations, and everybody was really, really good to us to figure out, okay, how do we get these kids back training? And then the next step was, okay, how do we test everybody to keep them safe? And so we've gone through this whole process. And, now that we're back to practicing, we're going to have a football game next Friday, and people can kind of see basketball on the horizon. I think now my players are thinking, wow, we're going to, this is going to work, and we're going to get to play next semester, which I think is important. But you are right, Erin, the mental health toll on athletes everywhere, and just in general, the student population and the young kids. Now it's been hard, and just being extra cognizant and extra aware. My freshmen have been so resilient and so good, and I'm blessed to have, they've come to campus. It's been different, but they've adapted, and that's what we kind of try to tell our kids. Please be adaptable and let's try to be kind of nimble and navigate through it and realize we may have some different things we have to go through. But, when we play that first game, I'm telling you, in February, I may feel like it's the first game I ever coached. I'm going to be super excited about that.
Yeah. And two, even with kind of like, it wasn't just your entire season was over and things like that. And it was just like, wow, okay. But like, you guys had a squad, like the girl, like you just returned so many amazing women and just incredible players, girls that really were just high level, high power. What did that kind of end up panning out with the NCAA? Like, are they going to be able to come back? What, with eligibility wise, I remember that was a huge question, especially people that, it's your senior year, you're kind of planning for, getting jobs. And like, I was lucky to kind of be friends with a few of them. And I was just like, I can't imagine kind of what's going on. But what did that kind of really look like with eligibility and things like that?
Yeah, we had six seniors. And so really it was the process of, and I'm fortunate. I have young women that are career driven, a lot of them going to professional school or, masters or on. So 4 of them were already basically their life was kind of laid out. One just got into to be a PA, a physician's assistant.
Yeah, shout out Kylie Becker.
One needed a student teach, right? Student teach, and 2 were getting their masters, and one of those getting married, and it was all laid out. So we took 2 of them came back, and there was a process of walking through that. Like, do you want to come back? I want you back, but you got to really want it. You got to want the grind. You got to want the uncertainty of what this is going to look like. You have to want the practices and everything. And so 2 young ladies came back, and along with the team that I feel like is going to be a phenomenal team, and we got 7 newcomers in here. I felt really sad for those other 4. But like I told them, come springtime, we're going to have your senior night just like you would have had it. I'm going to do everything the way you deserve that. And we're going to do it just like that. We're not going to forget about you and just, push you off. So they were really appreciative of that. And, they're going forward with their careers and they're happy. And we're happy for the two young women who stayed.
Yeah, definitely. I think too, just being able to have those conversations with your players and really lay things out and ask them, do you want to do this and things like that is super great and open. And I think that's a great relationship that you definitely have to have with your head coach. But then so this season you kind of talked about like your first game back is going to be like your first game you ever coached, maybe a little less nerves. Who knows? I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know, Coach.
Yeah, I don't know. It may be nervous, right?
Yeah, you're on it on game day, like everything. Like no one stand in the way, like clear the way for sure. But what kind of is, your mindset going into this season? And just kind of this point on, like fall season is getting ready to be done. Girls are going to go home for Thanksgiving and then they're not coming back, correct?
Correct.
Yeah. So what kind of then once they get back, like, like pray that everything, kind of goes the way it's supposed to. What's really going to be your main focus and that mindset this coming season?
I really want to try to get them ready in January. So they're going to come back before school starts, and we'll kind of what we call regate them. So we'll test them and, make sure that, everybody's negative, and then we'll get back to practice. And my entire, preseason, because we haven't faced an opponent since I think March the 5th, it will be almost a year before they face another opponent. It will be getting them comfortable in game action. I feel like that's the kind of the main thing to do is just get them to feel really, really comfortable before we go out there. And we're going to just focus on, honestly, the process. And for us, the process is getting better every game and, not putting too much pressure on ourselves, but just try to play at the highest level we can. We feel like we've got a really good squad, but I think for them right now, they need to see it. In other words, they need to get on that bus and they need to travel to their first game and play for them to believe, hey, this is a reality and it's going to happen. And I don't blame them for that right now. Like I've told them, softball is what's called an intermediate sport in the NCAA language, which means that, we can social distance pretty well. We're not around each other on the field. We wear masks, to practice when we're close. We've learned how to do that. The dugout will look a little bit different. We're going to be a little bit farther apart. We're going to have masks on, but we have figured it out, and they've done a tremendous job in the weight room with masks on. It's a new reality, but we're keeping everybody safe, keeping the community safe, which is really, really important, and buying into everything that we need to do.
Definitely for sure. Coach, you're awesome. I am just so glad that I've gotten to know you and work with you now. It was like those little kid dreams. I grew up, I was like, wow, we're really like literally working together. This is awesome. Just kind of like one last thing before we finish things off. What is just kind of one, big impact, that footprint you kind of talked about earlier, that you really want to leave on, not just SIU, not just Saluki softball, but, the sports world in general for women that really look up to you?
Well, I just feel like it's one of those things. I hope people look back and say, man, she put her head down and went to work. And I want my biggest legacy to be that I'm teaching these young women life lessons. It's, softball is great. They're going to come here for 4 years, but I tell kids this all the time. My proudest moments are when I get the phone call of, hey, I got into PA school. Hey, coach, I'm an FBI agent. Hey, I get those phone calls, and they, you see their families, and you see, them grow up and live their lives. That's what I'm most proud of. And I know that they're just great, productive people out in the community and out in the world in general. So, I hope that's what it's about, because that's what's really, really important to me.
Yes, definitely. Coach Blaylock, thank you so much for being on. I appreciate it. And yeah, thank you everyone for listening, and we will see you all next week.